Well, it's good to be with you here. I was not born, raised, and educated in West Virginia, although I did use the Green Bank radio telescope when I was here for graduate work in 1970. I was born, raised, and educated in Canada, and my story is different from Fuzz. Biochemistry was not it, it was astrophysics. Astrophysics brought me to faith in Jesus Christ, literally years before I ever got to meet and talk to a Christian. Now, we are going to have a Q&A time after I'm done with both Fuzz and me, but if you don't get to ask a question today, we do both take questions on our Facebook and Twitter pages. So you can go to Fuzz Rana Facebook or Hugh Ross Facebook, and you're welcome to ask us questions next week, next month, whatever. And at our book table, we're giving away a free copy of this book, Testable Faith. So if you scan that code, go to the table, they'll give you a copy of that book. But my talk is Cosmic Reasons to Believe in Jesus Christ. I mean, people are aware that cosmology reveals the existence of God, but I think it does way more than that. It actually reveals that Jesus Christ is the creator of the universe. Now, what kind of got me started is that I started studying astronomy when I was 7. Every year I would look at a different subdiscipline of astronomy. At age 16, I studied cosmology, the science of the origin and structure of the universe. And even at that time, it was clear of all the different models for the origin of the universe, the one that was fitting the observations was the Big Bang. And if it's Big Bang, there's a beginning. If there's a cosmic beginning, there must be a cosmic beginner. And so I went on a quest to find that cosmic beginner. Didn't really know where to look. I went through the writings of the great philosophers, but finally I decided to go through the holy books of the religions of the world. And it was a Gideon Bible that brought me to faith in Jesus Christ. But here's my 3-point outline, how we can look at the universe and discover that it reveals the existence of a transcendent God, a God beyond space and time, and how this God beyond space and time must be a personal, purposeful God, and finally a God intent on redeeming billions of human beings from their sin and evil. Now, the very first book I read in cosmology was when I was 7 years of age. It was a book called The Nature of the Universe by Fred Hoyle. And Fred Hoyle was coming from kind of an atheistic Hindu-type perspective. But what he wrote in his book was this remarkable statement. He said, there's a good deal of cosmology in the Bible. It is a remarkable conception. And I began to go through the Vedas and the Quran, the Buddhist commentaries, Zoroastrian writings, Baha'i. What I discovered is that what Fred Hoyle had written indeed was correct. The Bible's got more than 10 times as much to say about the origin and history of the universe as all the rest of the world's holy books combined. And so what I want to do in the next few minutes is show you what the Bible says about cosmology and that we astronomers have been able to affirm that the Bible alone gets the astronomy correct. Now, most of you are familiar that the Bible speaks about the beginning of the universe. In fact, I've discovered as I travel and speak around the world, doesn't matter where you go, everybody seems to know one Bible verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And I've met lots of people, that's the only Bible verse they know. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But the truth is, there are multiple statements in the Bible speaking about the beginning. And when it talks about the heavens and the earth, recognize in biblical Hebrew, there's no word for universe. Instead, they have this phrase, the heavens and the earth, used 13 times in the Old Testament, always refers to the totality of physical reality. The New Testament puts it this way, Hebrews 11:3, the universe that we can detect did not come from that which we can detect. And what can we detect? We can detect matter, energy, space, and time. And what I found unique about the Bible amongst the world's holy books, the Bible alone speaks about God's activities before space and time exists and gives a credit for the existence of space and time to God. What I found in the Eastern religions was the idea that gods create within space and time that eternally exists. The Bible says no. space and time did not always exist. They didn't exist until God created the universe. And which also you see in the Bible, it talks about how God was doing things before space and time even existed. 2 Timothy 1:9, the grace of God that we now experience was put into effect before the beginning of time. Titus 1:2, the hope that we share in Christ was granted to us before the beginning of time. Now, I was reading the Bible in my late teenage years at the same time that physicists in South Africa and Britain were developing the first of the space-time theorems. Today, we have over 30 of these space-time theorems. And probably the most famous one is this one. Inflationary space-times are not past complete. I mean, that's how you got to title your papers if you want to get published in the scientific literature. And by the way, if you want to come up and read this, I think you'll be blown away by the beauty and the elegance of the tensor calculus equations that are in here. They're just gorgeous. But it ends with a paragraph that we can all understand, and this is a summary of that paragraph. Any universe that expands on average has a space-time beginning, which implies a causal agent outside of space and time who creates our universe of space-time, matter, and energy. Now, what's interesting about this paper, two of the authors had for 10 years been able to produce concepts of the universe that did not require a space-time beginning, but every one of them would not permit the existence of life. What they'd recognize is unless the universe is expanding, there's no possibility for life in the universe. And if it's expanding, then indeed there is a space-time beginning. Now, one of these authors, Alexander Vilenkin, a Russian cosmologist who's an agnostic, he wrote this in a book about this theorem. He said, quote, "With the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. And what is that problem? Proof of a space-time beginning implies a causal agent beyond space and time who creates our universe of space, time, matter, and energy." And I was sharing with an audience both at Marshall and the high school yesterday that I was invited to speak at a NASA research facility, and the director came up to me and said, "This is NASA. You can't use the word God here." And I said, "Well, I don't think that's in the Constitution." But he says, "I don't care. I'm the director. You can't use the word God." And I said, "Well, is it okay if I talk about the causal agent beyond space and time who created the universe and designed it so that we humans can live?" He says, "Yeah, you can do that." But here's the bottom line. Just looking at these statements in the Bible and the space-time theorems, we now know a transcendent God must exist. And even Lawrence Krauss, our nation's most famous atheist physicist, wrote on page 173 of one of his books, "We cannot take deism off the scientific table." The force of the space-time theorems basically proves this. They still call themselves atheists, but they recognize there must be this transcendent causal agent. The real debate has shifted. Is God a personal being? And so it's interesting how the landscape has changed. Just in the last 5 years, a transcendent agent is now accepted, but the real question is God personal? Did he design the universe? And in particular, did he design it for the redemption of billions of human beings? Now, as much as the Bible says about the beginning of the universe, it says even more about the expansion of the universe. And most English translations will translate the Hebrew verb natah, as stretching out. But the lexical dictionaries will show you it means expansion. And what's interesting is the oldest book of the Bible, the book of Job, in verse 9, chapter 9, verse 8 says, "God alone expands the universe." It gives the credit for the expansion of the universe to God and God alone. And as you look at these other texts, what you discover is that the verb natah, which means expanding or expansion, it's used in all three Hebrew verb forms, which means that these passages are not figures of speech. They literally are talking about a God who stretches out the universe, continuously expands the universe from a space-time beginning. Now, in the early part of the 20th century, there's a big debate, particularly amongst astronomers who are not theists, saying the universe is not expanding. But today we have overwhelming evidence that indeed the universe is expanding. I've written a whole book on this, The Creator and the Cosmos, and I'm not going to give you the best proofs for the expansion of the universe. They're technical. Instead, I'm going to give you a visual demonstration of the expansion of the universe. And this is thanks to the Hubble Space Telescope and now the James Webb Space Telescope. These telescopes are capable of looking at galaxies at very great distances. So what you see in the left is an image of galaxies 12 billion light years away, which means we're seeing them as they were 12 billion years ago. And what you notice there is that the galaxies are jammed so tightly together, they're tearing spiral arms off one another. But as you move forward 10 billion years, the galaxies have now stretched apart sufficiently where that phenomena is rare. Both these images are to the same spatial scale. So you can actually see that the galaxies are moving farther and farther apart as the universe gets progressively older and older. Now, keep in mind, the Bible stood alone amongst all the science and philosophy and theology books of the world in stating that the universe is expanding. Not until the 20th century did astronomers even have any clue that we live in an expanding universe. So this is evidence that thousands of years ahead of time, the Bible had accurately, correctly predicted the detailed scientific features of the universe. And 8 times in the Bible it tells us we live in a universe where the laws of physics do not change. Probably the best example is Jeremiah 33. If you read the whole chapter, God is speaking to the Jews and saying, "You're not like me. You change your mind all the time. You're double-minded. But I'm a God that's immutable. I don't change. As proof, look to the laws that govern the heavens and the earth. As they don't change, I don't change." And then in the New Testament, it tells us that the entire creation groans as it is subject to its bondage to decay, basically making the declaration, the entire universe and everything in it is subject to a pervasive law of decay, what I would call the second law of thermodynamics. And hey, if you don't believe in that pervasive law of decay, take a look at one another. We're all evidences of ongoing decay. I mean, if you wait long enough, the chairs you're sitting in will decay. Everything is decaying. And this is a message you see throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. Everything we see decays, and decay in the universe never stops. Or what Jesus said at the end of John 16, "In this world you'll have tribulation, but take heart, I've overcome the world." And yeah, I like to paraphrase that. In this world you'll have thermodynamics, but take heart, I've overcome thermodynamics. And what I've written and why the universe is the way it is, the laws of physics are not only designed to make our existence possible, they're designed to be powerful tools in God's hands to eradicate evil. And the moment evil is eradicated, the laws of physics will have fulfilled their purpose. In the new creation, Revelation 21 and 22, there is no thermodynamics. There is no gravity. So when you enter into the new creation as a follower of Jesus Christ, gravity will not cause your chin and other body parts to sag. That's not going to happen. Electromagnetism is not going to cause your skin to wrinkle and decay. There will be no decay. But as long as God is eradicating evil, we need gravity, electromagnetism, and thermodynamics. Well, what I recognize as a young man, if indeed there's a space-time beginning, if the universe is continuously expanding from this space-time beginning under laws of physics that are not changing, where one of those laws is a pervasive law of decay, the thermodynamic law, then that means the universe must get colder and colder in a highly predictable way. It's the same principle as your car engine. I mean, if you've got a piston car engine, what happens when the piston expands? The gasoline stops burning. And then when the piston chamber compresses, if you've got a diesel engine, you don't need a spark plug. the piston collapses enough that it ignites the gasoline. This is a principle that applies to everything in the universe. So as the universe is expanding, it must get colder and colder in a highly predictable way. Now, frequently, Fuzz and I will be on university campuses where we're debating atheist professors, atheist science professors. And I remember being at the University of Alberta debating a quantum physicist. And he said, I want to see the Bible making a prediction that's numerical, not just qualitative, but quantitative. And I said, well, how about this? Here's the biblically predicted cooling curve of the universe. Once we know the age of the universe and these 4 statements in the Bible, we get this predicted cooling curve. And what you see with those little red dots there, those are actual measurements we astronomers have made of the past temperature of the universe. And what you see is that our measurements perfectly fit the biblically predicted curve. And again, the Bible stood alone in making these statements and implications until the 20th century. Again, evidence that thousands of years ahead of its time, the Bible accurately and correctly predicted. In fact, I was on Facebook today and a Hindu was engaging me saying, hey, we Hindus got it right. And I said, no, you didn't. What you see in the Hindu Vedas is that we live in a reincarnating universe where every 4.32 billion years you get a new rebirth of the universe. I say, we know that number is incorrect. We also know that the entropy measure of the universe is 100 million times too high in order to get a rebound of the universe. The Bible, and only the Bible, gets all the astronomy correct in terms of the origin and history of the universe. Now today, we know what's responsible for the expansion of the universe. It's gravity and dark energy, where dark energy plays a predominant role. Now, I'm just curious, how many of you here have heard of dark energy? Wow, at least half of you have heard of dark energy. Congratulations, it was only discovered in 1999. Astronomers were speculating about it since the early 1970s, but only in 1999 did we know that dark energy existed. Dark energy makes up about 71% of all the stuff of the universe. Don't you think this is amazing that something that makes up the vast majority of the universe wasn't discovered until 1999? Well, there's a reason why it was difficult to discover. Dark energy doesn't emit any light or heat. It's energy that's embedded in the space surface of the universe. And the way it operates is that as the universe expands, the space surface gets bigger and bigger. As it gets bigger and bigger, dark energy becomes progressively more powerful in accelerating the expansion of the universe. And that acceleration was difficult for us astronomers to measure. It wasn't really affirmed until 1999. But this dark energy makes everything expand. Everything is expanding. That includes your waistline. It expands as a direct result of dark energy. However, I'll assure you this, the local gravity effects far overwhelm dark energy. And so the most you can blame on dark energy is a quadrillionth of a centimeter per year. If your waistline is expanding at a faster rate than that, it's got an additional cause. Okay. But what astronomers discovered is this dark energy needs to accelerate the expansion of the universe at a just right rate if you want to get stars, galaxies, and planets and moons. I mean, if you expand the universe too rapidly, the gas will dissipate so that no stars will form at all. Or if you expand it too slowly, the gas will be collected by the gravity into nothing but black holes and neutron stars, or molecules would be impossible. Fuzz wouldn't have been able to give his talk if everything was in black holes and neutron stars. There'd be no atoms, there'd be no molecules, and no possibility for life. And it was none other than Lawrence Krauss, who published a paper where he said, I've now determined the degree to which we have to fine-tune dark energy to make life possible in the universe. So I find it amusing. It was an atheist who came up with this calculation. And he said it must be fine-tuned to within 1 part in 10 to the 122nd power. That's 122 zeros after the 1. And he concluded his article by saying, this is the greatest fine-tuning problem that we face in science. Well, it's the greatest one we can measure. I think, again, going back to Fuzz's talk, in biology, I'm convinced there's even greater fine-tuning there, but we have difficulty trying to measure the degree of fine-tuning. Now, what I've done in my writings is to compare the level of fine-tuned design we see in dark energy with the very best example of what we humans have been able to pull off. And most of my peers would say the best example of human achievement and inventiveness and design are these amazing gravity wave telescopes. I mean, these are incredible instruments. Over a 4-kilometer length, they can make measurements to within 1/10 of the diameter of a proton. By far the best machines we humans have ever built. But if we compare the level of design in the epitome of human achievement, what we see in dark energy wins by a factor of 10 to the 96 times, which implies that the one that designed this dark energy so we could all be here in this auditorium, at a minimum, is a trillion times more intelligent and more knowledgeable than those Caltech and MIT physicists that invented these gravity wave telescopes designed it. And I've worked with these people. They're not dumb. They're amongst the most brilliant humans that live on this planet. Or I could put it another way, the one that designed dark energy at a minimum is 10 to the 96 times better funded than the US government that made possible the construction of these instruments. Now, the point I'm making here is we're not just dealing with a deistic God, we're dealing with a theistic God, because only a person can manifest the attributes of intelligence, knowledge, creativity, and power. And we see here, just looking at dark energy, it's being manifested at a level that's many orders of magnitude beyond what we human beings are capable of. And it's such that it actually isolates the God of the Bible from the gods of the other religions of the world. What's unique about the God of the Bible is how intimately he's involved with his creation. And so this takes us to theism. It even takes us to the God of the Bible. And this has been acknowledged, not just by astronomers like me who are followers of Jesus Christ, but astronomers who are publicly confessed atheists. So for example, I've got this paper here written by 3 theoretical atheist physicists, and it's titled Disturbing Implications of a Cosmological Constant, which is another term for dark energy. And when they published their paper, it caught the attention of Philip Ball. He was the physics editor for the British journal Nature, the world's most prestigious science journal. And he himself was an atheist, but he read the paper and he said, I got to interview these guys. Good news, the interview is public. You can go online and read it for yourself. But I'm going to pull a couple of quotes from the interview. What the 3 theoretical physicists said is, quote, arranging the cosmos as we think it is arranged would have required a miracle. And of course, Philip Ball says that's an interesting statement coming from atheists. They said, well, here's another one. An unknown agent beyond space and time intervened in the evolution that is the history of the universe for reasons of its own, which explains the title of the paper, Disturbing Implications. In other words, as atheists, they said if dark energy is real, then we're forced with the recognition that there's this agent beyond space and time performing miracles for reasons of its own, which compelled them to close off their paper with this final sentence. Perhaps the only reasonable conclusion is we do not live in a world that is a universe with a true cosmological constant. In other words, dark energy must be wrong. These astronomers must have made a mistake. Dark energy doesn't exist. If it exists, then we got this agent beyond space and time performing miracles for reasons of his own. Now, the irony of this paper is it was published, and within a year after it was published, astronomers developed 9 independent observational demonstrations that not only is dark energy real, it's the dominant component of the universe. Now, what I've done for you, I've written at reasons.org 9 short articles where I describe these observational demonstrations. I'm not going to go into the details here, I don't have time, but these are the categories of evidences, observations that astronomers performed where they're able to show that dark energy indeed is real. It's the dominant component of the universe. If you're interested, just go to that URL and you'll see those 9 articles. Actually, you'll see 25, because today we have 25 independent observational demonstrations that dark energy not only exists, it's the dominant component of the universe. What does that mean? Yeah, we really are stuck with this agent beyond space and time, performing miracles for reasons of his own. And so both Christians and atheists are now agreed that this is the case. Now, dark energy is the most spectacular fine-tuning evidence we have that we can measure, but is by no means alone. What we began to do at Reasons to Believe, beginning in 1991, was to go through the scientific literature and say, how many other features of the universe can we find that show a degree of design that's superior to anything we human beings are capable of manifesting? And our whole goal was to determine, can we demonstrate the principle in Job and Psalms that the more we learn about creation, the universe, the more evidence we'll find for the supernatural handiwork of God? And so we went back to this project year after year after year, and this is basically what we came up with. In 1991, 17 different features of the universe and the laws of physics showed this high degree of design to make possible the existence of microbes. We're not even talking humans. Just to get bacteria, microbes in the universe, 17 features. And what you see as every year has gone by, the list has gotten longer and longer, where today it stands above 200 distinct features of the universe and the laws of physics that require this fine-tuning. If you want to follow this up, we have a 300-page document at reasons.org/fine-tuning. It's public access, and you can see all the features listed there, and we give you the links to the scientific research papers that document this, so you can check it out for yourself, or you can share it with your friendly neighborhood atheists, and they can check it out for themselves. That it really is true that the more we study nature, the more evidence we uncover for God's supernatural handiwork. And, Fuzz mentioned Paul Davies. I've actually engaged him 3 times in different debates. They're all public. You can watch or listen to those debates. And, but what he said in a book that he wrote, The Cosmic Blueprint, when we look at the universe, the impression of design is overwhelming. It's everywhere. Now, I've got about 50 books in my library at Reasons to Believe that are written about what this cosmic design, what's called the anthropic principle, that when we look in the universe, we just see evidence everywhere. It's designed to make life possible, and human beings in particular. But what I notice about those books, they stop at the level of the universe. And I think that's comfortable for the non-Christian astronomers writing these books, because they can keep God at an arm's length. But the truth is, we see this overwhelming evidence for design, not just at the level of the universe, but at every cosmic size scale. So, for example, we do indeed see it at the level of the universe, but we see it in our super galaxy cluster. That refers to a cluster of clusters of galaxies. There's tens of thousands of them in the universe, but we live in the only one that has a design features that makes possible the existence of life. The others are basically like a basketball shape of galaxy clusters. Ours is like a long strung out lines along filaments, and only there is life possible. And also we notice it takes a special galaxy cluster for life to be possible, a special galaxy group. We are living in the only galaxy cluster where advanced life is possible, and we're living in the only grouping of galaxies where advanced life is possible. Over 200 different features of our Milky Way galaxy must be designed to make possible the existence of advanced life. That's what bothers me about those Star Wars movies. They all begin with a galaxy far, far away. The problem is we astronomers have looked at galaxies far, far away. None of them are candidates for advanced life. They need to change the scripts of all those movies and bring it back into our Milky Way galaxy. But there the problem is there's only one location in our Milky Way galaxy where advanced life is possible. Yes, we live in a galaxy with 400 billion stars, but there's only one star we've been able to find so far that has the just right conditions that permits a planet to orbit it and which advanced life is possible. And I remember back in 1995 when we astronomers were discovering the first planets orbiting other stars. And there was a lot of excitement back then. We're going to find planets just like the planets in our solar system. Well, you can go online, Exoplanet Catalog, that'll pop up a catalog of all the ones that have been discovered. It's over 5,600 planets that have been discovered so far. Not a single one is like any of the 8 planets in our solar system. And this led to the discovery that every single planet in our solar system must be fine-tuned to make advanced life possible here on planet Earth. So when our family celebrates Thanksgiving, we thank God for Mars, we thank God for Mercury, we thank God for Venus and Uranus and Neptune, because if those planets weren't exactly designed the way they were, there would be no turkey on the table, there would be no people around the table, there would be no table. They're all necessary. And we now discovered that's also true of the 5 asteroid and comet belts that orbit about our star, the sun. Each one of them must be fine-tuned to make advanced life possible here on planet Earth. And over 500 different features of our planet must be fine-tuned to make possible our existence, and over 23 of our moon. Now, I've written 7 books over the last 20 years about this fine-tuned design of the universe and all its components that makes our existence possible, but the one that's gotten the most attention has been this book, The Creator and the Cosmos. It's now in the 4th edition. I keep updating it because the evidence keeps getting stronger and stronger. You can get a free chapter at reasons.org/Ross. And the latest of these 7 books is this one called Design to the Core, came out a year ago. You can also get a free chapter at reasons.org/Ross. But what's unique about this 7th book is I make the point that every component of the universe and every event in the history of the universe must be fine-tuned to make possible the redemption of billions of human beings. The universe is designed not just to make our existence possible, it's designed to make our redemption possible. And it's such that when I'm speaking to scientists who don't share my Christian beliefs, I say, wait, why don't you do your scientific research from a biblical redemptive perspective? See if it makes you a more successful scientist. And as they discover that it does make them more successful, my prayer is they'll actually pick up the Bible and see what I ask them to do about their life. But we've been doing the same thing with our galaxy and our solar system that we began to do with the universe, which is basically to continue going through the scientific literature and say, what is the probability that we're going to find a body anywhere in the entire universe that has the conditions that makes possible the existence of microbes? And so this basically shows you the result of our research, basically making the point that we now know enough about the universe to realize without God's divine miraculous intervention, there's less than 1 chance in 10 to the 556th power you're going to find a single body anywhere in the universe with a capability of having microbes existing for more than a few million years. And without that, there'd be no possibility for plants and animals. And what you'll see in that fine-tuning compendium that's up on our website at reasons.org/fine-tuning is that as you begin to go from microbes to plants and animals and then to human beings, and what you need for billions of humans to be redeemed, we see that the probability becomes progressively more and more remote, which indicates the purpose of the Creator, not just to create a place where life can exist, but where life can exist in great diversity and abundance so that humans can exist in a state where billions of them can be redeemed from their sin and evil. Again, reasons.org/fine-tuning. But now we discover the probability of this happening without divine intervention is less than 1 chance in 10 to the 1,614th power. Say, can you please put that in layman's language? Yes, that's roughly equivalent to the probability that one of you would win the California lottery, where you buy just 1 ticket each time, and that's the probability of winning it 200 consecutive times. Or, as one mathematician explained to me, that's really no different than the probability of winning the California lottery 200 consecutive times where you don't buy any tickets at all. It's just not going to happen. This really is evidence of God's supernatural intervention. Or, as Freeman Dyson, an American physicist, said, the more I examine the universe, the more evidence I find that the universe in some sense must have known we were coming. And when we observe the universe, we're looking back in time. The farther away we look, the farther back in time we see. And we notice is that the history of the universe is one of it being step by step by step design for the entry of we human beings at the just right time and the just right location in the universe. But let me wrap this up with how do we get to Jesus Christ? And I was on an airplane once with another quantum physicist, and he said, you got to explain to me why, if there's a God, there's so much decay in the universe. Couldn't he have done it with less decay, where we wouldn't have our bodies decaying at such a rapid rate, or what we do in our work and having it decay? And I says, well, the decay is necessary. If you don't have a very high level of decay, you can't digest your food. Stars will not be able to shine. We need a high level of decay just to be able to live. And he said, well, couldn't there be different laws of physics? I said, yes, but now there'd be no constraint against their sin and evil. And what you notice in Genesis chapter 3, the moment that Adam and Eve sinned, God says, because of what you've chosen to do, from now on, you'll be experiencing more pain, more work, and what you see in the book of Ecclesiastes, you're going to waste more time to undo the damage caused by your sin. And we are biologically designed that we do not enjoy extra work, extra pain, and wasted time. And so the laws of physics actually motivate us to avoid evil and pursue virtue. What I told my sons when they were growing up, if I don't discipline you, the laws of physics will. Well, now that they're in their 30s, they said the most painful part of my discipline was explaining to them the laws of physics. But it is really true. The laws of physics guarantee the more sin we commit, the more pain we experience, the more work we do, and the more time we waste. Now, we see in Romans chapter 2, it tells us that the requirements of God's moral law are written on our hearts. Our conscience is also bearing witness. And again, I was on Facebook this morning, and I had a number of people saying, hey, aren't all religions the same? And I said, well, they are the same, roughly, in terms of the moral message, which we would expect, because God has written his law in the heart of every human being, so we all know the moral standards that God expects us to live up to. But we also discover none of us is able to live up to what our consciences demand. God does not grade on a curve. Notice you feel the pangs of guilt every time you violate God's moral law that's written on your heart, even in the slightest degree, which tells us we are not able to do what God demands that we must do. But what you see in the book of Job, the oldest book of the Bible, Job, before any written scripture existed, said to his 3 friends, look at the creation. The creation reveals a God that's incredibly wise and intelligent and knowledgeable, a God that's extremely powerful, but also a God that's incredibly loving in the way that he's provided for all of his creatures. And his point was, the creation reveals a God who is so powerful, so wise, and so loving, he must do for us what we can't do for ourselves. And so it was Job who said, I'm not counting on my best efforts to live up to God's moral standard. I know I fall short, but I know there's an advocate, a redeemer, who will stand between me and God and do for me what I can't do for myself on the condition I depend on him rather than myself. And what did Job say in the 19th chapter? I know that my Redeemer lives, and in the end he will stand on the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. Isn't it incredible? He was actually able to declare the assurance of his salvation based on what he knew to be true about God from what he saw in the universe. So God literally did design the universe, the earth and earth's life, for the redemption of billions of human beings and for the total eradication of evil. This is what identifies the God of the Bible and separates him from the gods of the other religions of the world. The cosmos really does reveal not only a transcendent God, a theistic God, but the redeeming God that we see in the Bible. If you want to read more about this, it's in my book, Why the Universe is the Way It Is. But let me close with this. The heavens proclaim his righteousness, and all the peoples see his glory. I'm going to invite Fuzz to come up here because we're going to take the remaining time for questions, and you can ask us a question on any subject. We do have a rule, though. We would prefer you give us hardball questions, not softball questions. But, again, ask us any question that you would like.